but you've been selling on Amazon for a couple months now, you're starting to really see some success, but the only issue you're running into is that some days you're having $5,000 in sales while other days you're literally all the way down at 50. So in this video, I'm going to be able to clear up any of those concerns that you have with your cash flow management, and it's really going to start with 3 principles that I have over here within this cash flow optimization strategy. So the first one is really going to be reverse engineering your thought process behind how to actually generate whatever sales goal you have in mind. So for the example that I'm going to use is, let's say we want to generate $50,000 a month in sales. So you're thinking to yourself, how can I generate $50,000 a month in monthly recurring revenue in my Amazon business? Well, you need to think about how the actual inputs affect your outputs. So anything that you buy and resell will typically be double the sale price of your cost of goods. And let me explain. So let's say we buy a product for $10, right? And we're going to flip it for probably $20 because that's really where the average margin is going to be made. And depending on your sourcing criteria, that might be a 30% ROI, that might be a 33% ROI. Obviously, this is just generalized talk, but you need to be thinking about that when it comes to actually setting your goals so that you understand how to physically get there and not get stuck just daydreaming about it. So now that we've thought about how to actually generate this $50,000 a month in sales because we're considering our inputs, we are starting to come to the conclusion that, okay, if everything I buy is going to be half of what I sell it for, then that means we're going to have to be spending right around $25,000 month over month to generate the $50,000 in revenue goal that we have set for ourselves. Now, there is a caveat to this that many sellers are not considering, and that is what we call churn rate. So a healthy churn rate is typically going to hover anywhere from 70 to 80%. This number is just something that I've experienced in my own personal journey selling. And the reason for this is because there's a lot of external factors that us as sellers have no control over. And a lot of it involves Amazon's process from when you send products FBA, how long it takes to get to the warehouse, et cetera, et cetera. Also, if Amazon's losing certain inventory, and supplier lead times can also play a factor into this as well. So it's really important to consider your churn rate to be healthy at 70% plus, because you're never going to have 100% or a 1-to-1 ratio of you're going to spend $25,000 this month and you're going to instantly generate $50,000 next month. You will see quick results, but it's not going to be perfect 1-to-1. So now that we understand this, we can actually produce more consistent revenue and profits for our Amazon business. So diving into the next point that we're going to talk about here is building your foundation that basically controls everything on the back end of your business. So what smart sellers are doing now, which is very different from the model a lot of people ran 2 years ago, or even sooner than that. I started selling last year and I started to see this model sort of die off within the arbitrage space, and that was going very deep on one brand, category, type of sale, product, you name it, right? Just the principle of going deep, and that's all people did to scale, is no longer an efficient method. You need to be going wide, and that ranges from categories, brands, suppliers, sales, any of that stuff. You have to be expanding all of the products that you can carry on your storefront, because with how they're rolling out different, fee changes left and right, along with brand gatings, transparency codes, section 3s, IPs. There's so many things that you need to look out for as a seller to really keep you safe and not have to deal with any additional headaches. Also, having more variety will allow you to make more decisions as to what gets to stay in your catalog and also what needs to go. So it's very easy to get caught up in just spending money just to basically hit a spend goal. But what's really nice with having a wide catalog is that once your end of the month comes and you can see what's making you the most money, what's making you the most sales, what's producing the most for you, and then you can also see what's not producing like how you thought it would. You can trim the fat, keep the winners, and keep growing linearly to not have to keep dead weight on your boat when you're trying to keep the ship sailing. So one more thing that being wide helps with is the uncontrollable variables from Amazon, such as FC transfers. This process can also take a lot of time, and if you don't have a lot of capital dispersed amongst many different ASINs, it's really easy for all of your budget to get tied up into one thing because that's all you have your money invested into. So because we're taking action on the right steps now, we can actually avoid all of the issues that a lot of sellers before watching this video might be running into, and that is simply tied up capital into one ASIN or one brand that they may get regated on or can't sell anymore, right? You also have tanking inventory, which is a big thing that especially a lot of newer sellers, but also experienced sellers like myself have run into and will continue to run into, because it is a part of the business that you do have to cope with and try and do your best to mitigate, but it does happen very often. FC transfers holding our money, so anything that really gets stuck for a long time, I've seen transfers get stuck as long as 2 months before. And then you also have things like having to sell desperately and also over leveraging your money. When it comes to selling desperately, what I mean by this is basically when you're not willing to hold on to a product for maybe even a couple weeks because you're so strapped for cash that you need the churn, instantaneously, and that really prevents you from actually seeing long-term growth, because you can sometimes use tanking products to your advantage if you're willing to ride the dip long enough to where those products can shoot back up and actually give you a good chance at selling for much higher than maybe even you thought was possible. And over leveraging is something that I see a ton of people doing when they don't have a lot of money. They think they could spend a ton of money on inventory and they're not even tracking what they're spending money on. So once that product tanks and they have to liquidate, they're probably already losing money, and then they might have spent so much money that they can't even pay off the credit card anymore because they didn't track anything properly. So don't fall into any of these categories, and you certainly won't as long as you're following these 3 frameworks right here, and now you're in the green. So moving on to the third and final step is actually just going to be staying consistent. So the previous lessons that I just taught you absolutely need to be implemented daily, because if you're not implementing your spend daily, you're not going to see daily sales. So if you're trying to have like $3,000 days, $1,000 days, right? Anywhere from that $1,000 to $3,000 range, if you're trying to have big sales days like this, you absolutely need to be spending money on a daily to weekly basis, because everything you put into this business is reciprocated back in the same way. It just takes a little bit of time. So that's going to range anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a day in spend, or $3,500 to $10,500 a week. And if you're maybe a smaller seller watching this video, I know that sounds very, like a big stretch, and I used to think the same thing. It's really just a matter of showing up and doing all you can every day, getting your reps in, making sure you're studying your graphs, and really putting the time in to get good at this stuff, because eventually you end up compounding a lot of replens and a lot of knowledge that's going to enable you to make a lot more money with the time that you're putting in comparison to maybe where you're at right now, right? So just keep at it. You're eventually going to be able to spend money like this on repeat, no problems. Find a bunch of new products, have a bunch of good replens in your category. Now, a few things you're going to want to avoid is going to be spending all your money on seasonal items, bolos, and one-off brands, sales. So like if you're buying something from a brand direct site and it's a one-off type of thing, don't put all of your money into products like this that can raise some red flags as high risk or very short LTV, which is lifetime value, because you're not getting, like I just said, any lifetime value out of that product. So you might flip it, might turn your inventory, it might be really good, but are you going to be able to restock it next month? Are you going to be able to restock it maybe a couple months after that? If you have no lifetime value on your products, it's really going to hurt your business long term, because you're not actually building a business, you're really just hustling your way to whatever you're trying to hit. And then going super deep on sales to hit weekly spend goals is also a really bad habit. I see that sometimes people take the misconception of spending money daily and weekly, and they just start spending money stupidly. So spending money on things below their target criteria, also just spending money in places that they're going way too deep on, to where you can only sell 30 units of this a month and you're buying 60, right? So people just get desperate, and it's a really bad habit to fall into. And I'm actually going to show how to not do this in the green over here, so we'll get into that in a second. And then finally, like I was touching on up here, you really don't want to be going extremely deep on seasonal products if you don't have a foundation laid out, because there's no lifetime value you're going to get in these niches, to where if you sell, Crayola for back to school really heavy, right? But that's the only product you're interested in selling during the entire period of back to school, you are going to be wrecked by the time September and October rolls around, because you're going to have nothing ready for those months. You're not going to have anything even ready for Halloween maybe, because you focus so much effort on back to school. But more importantly, your churn is going to be completely zero because you didn't focus on building your backbone first. So instead, you're going to want to do this to actually give you a business that's going to be sustainable and long term. So you're wanting to spend money on small winners to further the foundation that you're trying to build, and that is ultimately going to give you more diversification and flexibility within the business. So you're not going to have to worry about your bolo drying up and then not producing any sales next month if you're spending money consistently every day across a bunch of different categories and brands and products and such. Now, once you have that backbone created, then you get to have the opportunity of taking advantage of the seasonal bolos, and that will really help catapult your sales during seasonal times of the year. Even stuff with the brand direct product that you may run across that you know that there's only going to be a short-lived time, or stuff like FBM products where you're flipping it really quick and maybe not able to sell it after a 2-week span. These are great products just to help build upon the momentum, but you don't want to have it be your momentum, right? You want it to just build upon the real momentum, which is the backbone of your business. And then finally, you're going to want to find the products first, okay? This is going to tie in to the point that I made up here, which is going super deep on sales to hit weekly spend goals. The way you avoid this is you're going to want to find your products first for the day, and then at the end of the day, reassess them to make sure that you're not making desperate buying decisions. So this is a trap that I see a lot of people fall into. I used to fall into this trap as well, and it would be because I was looking for an easy outlet, right? So I was looking to spend all my money for the week and not have to work the rest of the week, or not for that rest of the day. But really all that does is put you in a deeper hole a month later when it's time to actually sell that inventory, when you have to check your repricer and see that, it's down $5 and you're in the red. So to avoid this, find your products whatever time you're sourcing, come back to them a few hours later when you're done with your sourcing session, reassess all the products you found, and from that list select the best ones so that you're not spending money on an easy buy like a replen that might be at a really low profit margin, or like an item that you just like because you want to test it out, but you're also kind of lazy and you don't want to put more effort into finding other products. This is a very big hack that a lot of people don't even consider when sourcing on a day-to-day basis, which is again why people get caught up in this idea that daily sourcing is bad. It's really not, and I think it's honestly more beneficial to build good habits and good consistency, but in order to build good habits, you have to always be thinking with the best headspace, and reevaluating, coming back with fresh eyes is always a great way to do that. And again, it helps avoid getting desperate to spend that money. If you start implementing the strategies we talked about in this video, I guarantee you're going to start seeing more consistent results within your Amazon revenue, and your orange bars are going to start looking a lot more linear than stagnant and up and down and all over the place. So we covered how to reverse engineer your thought process to actually make sure that you are thinking correctly about your inputs. We also discussed how to build a wide foundation and a steady catalog, and we talked about how to stay consistent with a daily spend goal to ensure that your criterias and your consistent revenue goals are met. So if you guys like this kind of content, let me know. A like would be much appreciated. Any comments, questions like that, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll definitely be sure to respond. And I'll see you in the next one.